Hi everyone, a lot of you already know me. My name's Holly. I work at the Sun Prairie store. This is Katie, Hannah, and Grace, and we would like you to watch a short video that is intended to help you gain a better understanding of intimate partner violence and how we can assist survivors when they come into our stores.
Our goal through this presentation is to offer some insight as to how we can help interrupt and dismantle domestic violence through our interactions with survivors. If we can help just one person, then the time we've invested in this project and the time you invested in watching this presentation is well worth it.
This is an issue that means a lot to us and our fellow classmates in our Gender and Violence course at UW-Whitewater. So we want to thank everyone for taking the time to watch this presentation. We also understand that some of you may not be able to watch this, so please take a look at the content warning above. The last thing we want to do is make anyone relive trauma, so if you have to excuse yourself from taking part in watching this, we completely understand.
And to give everyone an incentive to pay attention, there is a quiz linked in the email sent out, and if you score above an 80%, you'll be entered in a drawing to win a $50 Amazon gift card.
I'm here to tell you the story of crazy love, a psychological trap disguised as love, one that millions of women and even a few men fall into every year. Why does she stay? If you had told me that this smart, funny, sensitive man who adored me would one day dictate whether or not I wore makeup, how short my skirts were, where I lived, what jobs I took, who my friends were, and where I spent Christmas, I would have laughed at you. The answer is easy. I didn't know he was abusing me. Even though he held those loaded guns to my head, pushed me downstairs, threatened to kill our dog, pulled the key out of the car ignition as I drove down the highway, poured coffee grinds on my head as I dressed for a job interview. I never once thought of myself as a battered wife. Instead, I was a very strong woman in love with a deeply troubled man, and I was the only person on earth who could help Connor face his demons. I was able to leave because of one final sadistic beating that broke through my denial. So I broke the silence. I told everyone. The police, my neighbors, my friends and family, total strangers. Abuse thrives only in silence. You have the power to end domestic violence simply by shining a spotlight on it. Recognize the early signs of violence and conscientiously intervene, de-escalate it, show victims a safe way out. Together, we can make our beds, our dinner tables, and our families the safe and peaceful oases they should be. Thank you.
We also cannot remain silent and think it is just their issue when we are confronted with the situation at one of our stores. Often we're one of the first places domestic violence survivors will visit in order to secure their privacy and distance themselves from their abuser. We need to take a bystander intervention approach, which is a strategy that encourages witnesses to recognize a potentially harmful situation and respond in ways that can positively influence the outcome. Here is a basic overview of intimate partner violence with some important facts that we all should know. Domestic violence is a pattern of assaultive and coercive behaviors, including physical, sexual, and psychological attacks, as well as economic coercion, that adults or adolescents use against their intimate partners. It is prevalent in both heteronormative, which means opposing sex, and non-heteronormative relationships, and it affects people of all ethnicities, races, and economic classes. It is purposeful behavior intended to garner control over the victim and gain compliance from them. It usually is not a result of mental illness, as perpetrators are making rationalized, well-thought-out decisions that are intended to manipulate and subdue the victim. It is always about the need for power and control, and there is almost always one victim and one perpetrator. In both heteronormative and non-heteronormative relationships, studies have shown that there's almost always one primary aggressor. In heteronormative relationships, 85% of domestic violence victims are female. Therefore, intimate partner violence is not just a woman's issue, it is just as much, and if not more of, a men's issue. However, men can be victims of intimate partner violence as well, and ideas about masculinity can make it more difficult for men that are victims to seek help or to admit that they are being abused. Intimate partner violence is the leading cause of injury to women, more than car accidents, muggings, and rapes combined. With it being the leading cause of injury to women and one of the leading causes of death, it is a pervasive issue that is not discussed enough in our society or any society around the world for that matter. It is often looked at as solely a woman's issue and therefore dismissed. However, since men are the overwhelming perpetrators, it is also a men's issue, and men need to be a part of the solution. I'm definitely not trying to shame or guilt any of my male coworkers here. I'm just pointing out that it is a problem that we all need to work on together, and I hope that we can all be a part of attempting to help victims in any way we can. Additionally, although domestic violence affects women at higher rates, we don't want to make assumptions about anyone that comes into our stores, and we want to look for the signs and help anyone that may be a victim. As mentioned, domestic violence affects men also, and it affects people in the LGBTQ community, as well as people of all races, ethnicities, and socioeconomic classes.
Here's an overview of intimate partner violence and tactics used. When the general public thinks about domestic violence, they usually think in terms of physical assault that results in visible injuries to the victim. This is only one type of abuse. There are several categories of abusive behavior, each of which has its own consequences. The types of intimate partner violence include physical and sexual violence, threats of physical or sexual violence, and psychological or emotional violence. Stalking is another form of intimate partner violence and refers to harassing or threatening behavior that is repeated by an individual. This can include repeatedly appearing at the victim's home, leaving unwanted presence, following and tracking the victim, spreading false rumors that lead to defamation, and an overall disrespect of personal boundaries and wishes. Physical violence is just one tactic that perpetrators use to exert control over women. Perpetrators use multiple different tactics in order to ensure power and control within the relationship. Listed below are some tactics that abusive partners may use.
So here are some signs to look for when spotting a victim of interpersonal violence. Physical abuse signs that may be visible are black eyes, bruises on arms, busted lips, marks on the neck, sprained wrists. These can be consistent with being punched, choked, knocked down, etc. Some emotional signs may be if they appear fearful, anxious, tearful, or angry. And they may be in need of a new phone that may have been broken, but they don't have the money. And abusers sometimes limit their victims' access to money, which is a form of economic abuse. And if they're changing their phone number or asking for a printout of their call history, it may be an indicator that they are a victim of interpersonal violence.
The statistics outline the reality that the most dangerous time for a survivor is when they leave the abusive partner. 77% of domestic violence-related homicides occur upon separation, and there is a 75% increase of violence upon separation for at least 2 years. This means that when a survivor is at our store and attempting to make the changes necessary to fully exit an abusive relationship, it is an extremely dangerous time for them. That is why it is so important that we help to the fullest extent possible. Often, survivors of abuse have no idea where to turn, and our actions could very well save their lives.
Attempting to leave safety planning. While we are not trained to help with safety planning at the store, we can direct survivors to the resources that can help. Additionally, it can be helpful to understand the basics of what a safety plan entails and to understand whether the victim has one in place before making any changes that could help put them at further risk. Even though survivors may not leave an abusive relationship right away or all at once, developing a safety plan can be useful when the decision to leave has been made. The following is what a safety plan may include. Part of the safety plan may include changing phone numbers or keeping an alternative cell phone nearby, and also memorizing important cell phone numbers. It's important to note that some of the things on the list may not be obtainable for victims depending on the abuse and tactics used against them. Some may not have access to a vehicle or transportation. Also, they may not have a safe place to go with people to help them. They do not have their own job and their partners in control of the money. Lack of financial resources is another factor that deters victims from attempting to leave.
Now we are going to discuss digital abuse. Abusers use multiple methods to control their partners, and digital abuse is quickly becoming one of the most common ways. Digital abuse occurs when an abuser gains access to a smartphone, tablet, or any other digital device. Through spyware, stalkerware, software, and mobile apps, abusers may be able to gain access to a victim's personal information, such as bank account information, photos, text messages, or location. This is an issue that we all need to be aware of. Based on where we all work, we have the unique ability to help people being subjected to this type of abuse.
Securing the customer's account and phone. So, changing account information and passwords may put the customer at risk by angering the perpetrator. But if they have a safety plan in place, we can help them to ensure the perpetrator no longer has access to their personal information. Instruct the customer to create a new My Account login by calling customer service. Inform them that they should create new logins or passwords for all of their apps, including their cloud accounts. If the account is under their name, ensure the perpetrator is no longer listed as authorized on the account. Ask them to change their U.S. Cellular 4-digit PIN number and security question. Direct them to change their security login to their phone as well.
Many apps and services make it possible for potential stalkers to track their victims' locations and gain access to texts. In addition, there are also some apps that even secretly record video. Although this is a more advanced feature, it is still possible to do. Apps such as Life360, KidGuard, FamilyGuard, etc. are apps that were created for parents to monitor and ensure safety for their kids, but stalkers have taken advantage of the use of these apps for alternative motives. In order to place these apps and services on a phone, access to the victim's phone or their passwords must be obtained. Although it seems difficult, it is very common for a partner to have this access in a domestic relationship or if they are threatened by that person. Many of the apps that these stalkers then download on the victim's phone exist without the victim even knowing they are there. This allows the stalker to secretly watch and monitor their victim's activity. To prevent apps from tracking locations, turn off location sharing in settings, either for all apps or the specific ones that don't seem safe. Stalkerware refers to tools such as software, programs, apps, and devices that enable someone to secretly spy on another person's private life through their mobile device. The abuser can remotely monitor the whole device, including web searches, geolocation, text messages, photos, voice calls, and much more. Such programs are easy to buy and install. They run hidden in the background without the affected person knowing or giving their consent. According to the Coalition Against Stalkerware is an example of how technology may facilitate abuse such as partner surveillance, gender-based and domestic violence, harassment, and more. In recent years, the problem of stalkerware has been on the rise globally. Nonprofit organizations report a growing number of survivors are seeking help with stalkerware, and cybersecurity companies are detecting a consistent increase in these harmful apps. Stalkerware is often marketed as a way to spy on current or former partners, but parental control or employee tracking software can also be used. Many stalkerware apps are hidden, cannot be deleted, and are embedded into the entire software of a phone. The best way to know if a device contains the type of stalkerware that is not easily removable is to check for signs of a jailbroken iOS device or a rooted Android device. The victim may want to have a safety plan before removing the stalkerware, so it is best not to make any changes to the phone without their permission. In removing it, the abuser may escalate the situation, which would put them at further risk. For iOS devices, Find My iPhone is the main app that can be used by stalkers to directly track their victims' locations. For Android and Samsung devices, the main apps are Find My Device and Find My Mobile. If your location is shared with someone, They can see your exact location at all times through their own phone. A way to prevent this on iOS devices is to turn Find My iPhone off or disable sharing with that person. For other devices, turn off all tracking and settings the device allows or delete the apps. These methods will disable your location sharing mode. On all devices, Google Maps is also an app that can track a victim's every move. It not only shows their current location, but can also show where that person has been and where their current location is through Google Timeline. In order to prevent this, delete timeline history by going to My Google Activity and turn off location history. Then to turn off all tracking, turn off Google's location tracking from the My Activity dashboard.
Here are some key takeaways from this presentation. So it's important that we have an overall understanding of intimate partner violence and the signs that survivors may display when they come into our stores in order to take a bystander intervention approach. There are many ways in which we can help, such as securing the customer's U.S. Cellular account and ensuring that they understand the importance of changing passwords and logins in order to secure their privacy from digital abuse. We all need to be aware of the increased prevalence of stalkerware and the ways in which we can assist individuals that may be subjected to this type of digital abuse. Most importantly, we need to be empathetic and listen to survivors that come into our stores. We may be the one person that makes a difference. While the ways in which we can help are limited, we can always direct them to the resources that can better assist them. Sometimes survivors have no idea where to turn.
We want to sincerely thank everyone for watching this video. It does mean a lot to us. Please take the quiz. We will draw a name in about a week, and anybody that scores over an 80% has a chance of winning that $50 gift card. We're also going to be sending out purple bags to every store. If you do come across phones that are in good condition but are not worth anything through a high-lit trade-in and the customer does not want to keep, please put them in the bag. I will be bringing them to local shelters that are in need of phones. It is very common for abusers to break or damage their partner's phones, and phones can be a very necessary lifeline for those facing this type of situation. Additionally, the list of resources will be on the intranet. There will be more information on where to find that shortly. And if you do have any questions about any of the topics discussed, please reach out to me via email. I am more than happy to answer anything. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.